Welcome back to my podcast, Your Career, Your Life, where today we are going to be talking about quitting. I just want to take a minute to introduce myself since I am new to YouTube, putting these videos out there. However, my podcast has been happening for a little over 2 years now. I want to encourage people who have only listened to it to go over to YouTube. But if you're here watching me, go ahead and subscribe to this video. It helps me so much to grow as a new YouTuber. My channel is dedicated to helping women in midlife go after their dreams and to remember that there is more in midlife. So here we go. Let's talk about quitting. So today we're going to quickly define quitting, kind of talk about the rise of quiet quitting. And I don't know why I got a little quieter when I said quiet quitting. Maybe it didn't sound that way on here, but I feel like I got quiet quitting. Anyway, so let's, and then we're going to kind of give you a reframe for quitting, a different way to think about it, and most importantly, how to transition into something else while being smart about it. So, I mean, by definition, quitting is giving something up, right? Leaving it behind, whether that be a job, a relationship, just about anything, right? We quit bad things too, like quit drinking, quit smoking, quit other, things that aren't healthy for you. So I think quitting traditionally is thought of as a negative thing. It is viewed as you've given up on something, or that, maybe you gave up too easily and you didn't try hard, or whatever it might be. I think there's a negative connotation that goes with quitting. And a lot of times that can keep us from stopping the work we're doing that we no longer enjoy. And I think also what the dictionary definition of quitting fails to do is look at why someone is quitting something and what they're quitting it for. What are some other ways to think about quitting? Quitting can mean that you are choosing yourself. You're choosing your mental health, your physical health, or just you're choosing what you want over what you're currently doing. It's also moving on to something else, something new, something different. It's not, you're leaving one thing, but usually when you're leaving that, you're leaving for a reason, for another career. Maybe you're starting a family. Maybe you're retiring, right? And then we wouldn't call it quitting, we'd call it retiring, but whatever. You know what I'm getting at here. Maybe it's to start a new business. There are so many reasons other than giving up, so to speak, that are why you quit. Quitting can also mean that you are stepping into alignment with what your values are now. As we age, our values change. What was important to us in a job when we were starting out in our 20s or even 30s is different when we're entering our 40s and 50s. Our families are in different places, in their lives, different stages. And when you might have valued like flexibility when you had young kids because you needed to be able to take off for them for events or for doctor's appointments or whatever, maybe now you don't need as much flexibility, but maybe now you value your freedom and autonomy in a job, and you want something that gives you a little bit more of that. So those are just some basic examples, but you see what I mean? Like you can just be stepping into alignment with where you are now in life with your values. I think a fun way to look at quitting also is creating space for something else, because if all of our time or even mental energy is taken up on this one thing that we don't really enjoy, when we decide to move on from it, we now have the time or the mental capacity to do that thing. I think a lot of times this can be really good for creative things we want to try, that we have the mental space and clarity or just freedom to explore that creativity. And if you're overwhelmed with stuff at work, especially stuff that's not lighting you up, you're not going to find that creative spark inside of you as easily. So even though like when I left teaching to become a nurse, like I wouldn't say I quit teaching. That was the title for one of my videos on here. But I mean, I guess some people would say she quit teaching, which I did, but I was leaving teaching to become a nurse. Um, in my different roles as a nurse, the 3 different roles I had, if you want to go watch that video that kind of talks a little bit more about my nursing career, I will link it at the end of this video. So I left, you know, different positions in the hospital for new ones. And then I also left the hospital altogether for a different nursing job. So, and then when I left nursing to become a coach, I I mean, I feel like that was the one job where, you know, I gave my 2 weeks notice to move on to coaching. And actually, it wasn't 2 weeks notice. I gave them like probably 2 months notice. Anyway, that may be the closest one to like quitting that I can think of. But I still was like, no, I'm moving on to something new. I think one time when I did quit, I can think back to like a job I had during college, like working a summer camp one summer and just like being miserable. And it just wasn't a good fit for me. And I didn't make it through the summer and I gave my notice, you know, like halfway through, which I feel bad about that. But that was probably the closest to like quitting I came to, that I would define as a true quitting. I don't know. I'm sitting here trying to tell you, quitting is simply moving on. That was one time when it was like I didn't have bills to pay, and I was just like, I don't want to do this, and I quit. I did give a notice. I didn't like quit on the spot kind of thing, because also I'm all about not burning bridges. So keep that in mind. And I think maybe that's also, we think of quitting in an impulsive way sometimes. Like when you're miserable at work, you just want to like, you daydream sometimes about just like walking out and never returning, or just going to your boss and being like, hey, I'm done. Or like they send you one more email that is maybe slightly nasty in tone, or you just don't appreciate, and you just want to reply, I quit, goodbye. So we're not talking about being impulsive here. We are talking about being thoughtful with our moves and intentional. I think another thing to throw in here while we're talking about quitting is something that's become a more common term over the last, I'd say like maybe 5-6 years, is quiet quitting. And when I first heard that, I was like, what? I don't understand. What does that mean? So it's basically like you're pulling away, you're disengaging emotionally from your work. You're not putting your best forward. You're pretty much just maintaining what you need to, because you are no longer happy there. A lot of times this is from burnout, or you're feeling undervalued or unappreciated. Maybe you see that there's really no growth for you. And that was one of the things I felt maybe I did a little bit of quiet quitting at my last nursing job, now that I think about it. Because you stop going above and beyond. You put really strict boundaries in place, and sometimes those are needed for sure, especially if you're having some burnout and you can have some misalignment with the workplace values or culture. But I just want you to remember that quiet quitting is a symptom. It's not a solution, and it is definitely a signal that something needs to change, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you transition smarter instead of just quitting on the spot. We don't want to get to that point where we just want to walk away. As usual, I've said this before, you want to write down why you want to leave. What is it that you want to get away from, and what is it that you are craving? Then I want you to explore your options. I want you to decide, like, is it a new career? Is it entrepreneurship, starting a business? Is it just maybe you need a new workplace? You just tired of showing up to where you currently are showing up to? That happens sometimes. We just need to shake some things up in our life. Then I want you to start getting prepared. You're going to update your resume. You're going to update your LinkedIn profile. You're going to start networking and making like kind of reconnecting with maybe some people in your network that you've lost touch with, that could be useful when you're ready to leave. And another thing is to get your finances in order. The guide that I have that's called What If It's Not Burnout, which I talked about last week, um, I'll link it in my show notes, is you want to get your finances in order. You want to make sure you have a plan, because it's going to happen a couple of different ways, right? You're either going to find something while you have a job currently and set it up so that you kind of go from one job into the next, or you could set yourself up in a way that, if possible, if your finances allow you to, you could be okay for a set number of weeks, months, whatever it is, in order to make that transition. Now, that might also be possible. Maybe you need to go back to school. So financially, can you afford that? How are you going to pay for it? And figuring out, how much school do you need? Is it a whole new degree, or is this just some classes you need in order to get to the next step? Like when I became a nurse, I didn't go back for my bachelor's. I already had one. I just needed some prerequisites to get into nursing school. So that was where I started. So you want to make sure your finances are in order. I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but I want you to be in a good position. Clearly, the most risky way to do that is to leave your job, even if you just give, a couple weeks notice and you don't have something lined up. But that is all dependent on your situation and how confidently you feel that you can move into the next position you want. Another way to look at this financially is, if you are looking at starting your own business, is there some of that you can do after hours, on the side, on the weekend, build up some maybe income coming in from that business before you leave your other job. I didn't have that guidance going into starting my own business. I wound up okay, but I lost a lot of sleep at night. Let's just put it that way. So, word to the wise. Another thing to do is to build a support system, and that's going to be friends, family, the right ones. I've talked about this before. Not all friends and family are the right people to support you through something like this. So choose wisely. A coaches, we are great at being the accountability and being the sounding board, at being the person to help keep you going from step to step in order to reach your goals. Or maybe it's a mentor in the field that you're trying to move into, or at the job where you're trying to move into. Just find a support system that you can rely on or bounce ideas off of. And then you can create a timeline, kind of set your goals. A lot of times what's recommended is you start with the goal in mind, right? And you work backwards. And you're going to figure out how much time you need along the way for each step. And be realistic about this, okay? If you're someone who tends to procrastinate, or you're super busy in life in some other ways, be realistic about how much time it's going to take you in that timeline. So basically what I'm trying to ask you here is to be strategic about your quitting and not impulsive. Okay, that is key. And remember, you don't have to hit your breaking point in order to start all of this. If you're already having the idea that you want something new, something different, and you're ready to leave, start making your plan now, today. After you get off this video, start. Just remember, quitting isn't failing. Quitting isn't giving up. Quitting is listening to yourself, is going after your dreams. Quitting is moving on and following what your inner voice, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, is telling you to do. All right, so you know what to do. After you listen to this podcast or watch it, go make your plan. Step 1, what is your first step going to be? Okay, I will see you in October, and I don't know what we're going to be talking about yet, but you'll find out when you come back for that first October podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video if you found it helpful, and come back every week, because every Tuesday I will have a YouTube video drop, and then on Wednesday the podcast episode drops. So 2 a week. Come back and see what more I have in store for you. And I don't even know. I have all kinds of ideas. And I can hear things that I want to talk about. I can see them in my brain. Sometimes when I go to implement, I get scared, but that's what I'm working through here. This has inspired me to get out of my comfort zone, which is what I talk to you about and encourage you to do. Get out of your comfort zone, go after your dreams, take those ideas out of your head, and let's do it. All right, see you next week. Bye.